Go.
Hi, I'm Jake Damhoff, and I'm here today to present my research topic of corporate inversion. So what exactly is corporate inversion? Corporate inversion is an attempt by corporations to change their legal status into becoming a foreign corporation to minimize their tax rates. This is done in two different ways. The first way is to actually lower their tax rates. And the way they will be doing this is by going away from the U.S. tax rate of 35% and taking on a lower tax rate in their foreign country. The second way they can do this is earnings strippings. What earnings strippings is essentially taking profits a corporation has and shifting those from a higher tax bracket to a lower tax bracket through intercompany loans. Corporate inversion has also been seen as a strategic advantage by a few CEOs of corporations. And recently, an anonymous CEO of an inverted corporation stated how he believed that corporate inversion was the best tax code money could buy. So the question I will be trying to answer throughout my research and my presentation is, what actually are the effects of lost tax revenue on the United States? So why is this topic and why is this question so relevant, and what's the importance of it to the audience? Well, it is important because it has a clear-cut cause and an effect. The cause of corporate inversion is primarily due to the high tax rates of the United States being 35% and corporations wanting to get away from that. The effect of this corporate inversions is has large impact on the U.S. Treasury due to the decrease in U.S. tax revenues. This research is also important to a few audiences, the first being of government and policymakers. The reason these two organizations are important audiences is because they have been feeling the pressure in recent years of trying to eliminate any opportunity for corporations to invert and bring it back to U.S. tax revenue. The second audience that would be of importance of this are key decision makers in corporations. The reason that the key decision makers will relate to this is because they also will be feeling pressure, but the pressure of whether or not they should invert and whether or not their inversion would be beneficial to the corporation. So what I found in existing research on this topic dealt with an article that was presented by two professors, Jim Sita and William Webby. What these two did in their research was they took 36 total firms, 12 of which were inverted and 24 of which were control firms, and the 24 control firms were competitors of the 12 inverted firms. Their study then looked at 10Ks and 8Ks of the SEC filings and had an effective date of June 2002, and in this they attempted to examine the changes of effective tax rate, the changes of pre-tax net income, and the tax savings from their earnings strippings that they would profit from. So the first table that this study looked at dealt with the effective tax rate changes. And as you can see, the study shows that the difference between the control firm and inverted firms in pre-inversion years wasn't very substantial, pretty distinct. However, upon inversion, the difference between the control firms and the inverted firms jumped at roughly 7.6% up to 10.4%. This large gap of 10.4% gives inverted firms a competitive advantage over control firms when it comes to increasing revenue due to lower tax rates. The second table that they studied dealt with changes in pre-tax income. In this study, they looked at four of the 12 inverted firms and compared their pre-tax incomes, foreign and U.S., and then looked at their total tax decrease. What they found here was that U.S. pre-tax income decreased substantially after post-inversion years, and the foreign pre-tax income actually jumped. Because of this decrease in U.S. pre-tax income, the total tax essentially decreased because the 35% tax rate of the U.S. was not being applied to as high of a pre-tax income in the United States. The third and final table that they presented in their research dealt with earnings strippings and the U.S. tax savings from these earnings strippings. What they found here, using the four companies from the previous table, was that each of these corporations received a savings on U.S. taxes because of their ability to perform earnings strippings. Because they were able to move or shift profits from higher tax rates to lower tax rates, these four companies total saved about an estimate of $520 million. So what this study concluded was that in their findings, they found that on an average, with the 12 corporations, that there was an effective tax rate reduction of nearly 11.6%. They also found that this effective tax rate reduction was affected by the income shifting from U.S. to foreign income. They also found that the substantial effective tax rate reduction was a result of the earnings shifting and their ability to move profits from higher tax rates to lower tax rates. So the research process that I went about sampled another 12 corporations who had recently inverted from 2009 to 2014. What I did with my more recent data was I took and I compared 2 years of prior inversion, and then I compared that to the inversion year plus 2 post-inversion years. The reason I looked at 5 years, a 5-year period, was so that I could go and string out and lengthen my financial data and try and find more consistent data in case there were years that corporations had kind of goofy numbers and numbers that just didn't go with the consistency of the corporation. And when I went about comparing these corporations, I went and I took the pre-inversion years and I found or averaged out their effective tax rates, found an average of what that was, and then I also took the inversion and the post-inversion years, averaged out those tax rates, found the difference between the pre-average and the post-average, and averaged those out and came up with what I believe was an estimated difference in average effective tax rate after inversions. I then took that average effective tax rate after inversions and I applied that to post-inversion average pre-tax income to find out how much actual income or lost tax revenue the U.S. Treasury would be losing if those corporations were inverting, or not inverting, but if those corporations were losing that tax revenue that year. And I felt that the importance of this research was because it came off of my findings being a lot more relevant and having newer financial data than the existing research I had found. And the differences I came across with this was instead of looking at inversion firms compared to control firms, I took my research and tried just to compare it to inversion firms, primarily because I felt that I could take that data that I find and compare it to and lengthen out in comparing what tax rates or lost revenue would be to the U.S. Treasury in future years, and also extrapolating that to corporations who have yet to invert. And so what I found in my findings was that each and every corporation ended up with a positive impact after they inverted. The average decrease in tax rates ended up coming out to roughly 10% due to pre-inversion average of around 25% and the post-inversion average coming around 15%. And then, as I mentioned, I took and I sample totaled the the average post or difference in inversion or effective tax rate inversions, and I took that against all the post-inversion pre-tax income and found that within 1 year after the post-inversion, the U.S. Treasury would have lost tax revenue of roughly $991 million because of these inversions. The number does not seem like a lot as of 1 year. However, when you take that up 10 years, you find that U.S. Treasury would lose just on 12 companies roughly $10 billion in U.S. tax revenue. And then I wondered how this would affect if many of the top U.S. corporations were to invert, and I went and applied a 10% average and took that against the top 50 of the Fortune 500 companies and used their tax expense, and found that if all 50 of those corporations were to invert in 2014, the U.S. Treasury would have lost $18 billion in U.S. tax revenue. And so what I concluded with my findings was that corporate inversion does not have as great of an effect on U.S. Treasury and U.S. tax revenue as of now. However, with the substantial increase in corporate inversions in the recent years, the increase in tax revenue could also find its way increasing as well, and having a greater effect in the long run. So my research limitations, what I found in in my limitations was that a lot of my financial data was unable to be available. A few of my sample corporations did not go out in the future as far as I would have liked it to. So they're stringing those corporations out was kind of, their financial data out wasn't analyzed as well as some of the other corporations. And I also would have liked to take some of my average tax rates and apply that to more inverted corporations to find out how much the U.S. Treasury is losing each year with the corporations who are already inverted now. But because of limitations on financial data, again, I could not go about that. Thank you.